Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. Education is one of the cornerstones to leading to a extraordinary and fantastic life. Learning what is around us and what not only is on our planet, but what is out in the cosmos has been a cornerstone of my life, and I couldn't have done it without some of the basic skills that we need: reading, writing, and of course math. Now granted, most people won't go much further than algebra, and many who study the cosmos, they study much more than that with advanced calculus and things like that. But those basic skills that they learned in elementary school is what led them down these paths, led them to the thought processes, the logic paths that they used to study. Now, many school systems are falling short on these ideas of the basic skills, and some of the things that we actually need. Maybe some of these things are being a little too much replaced by computers. Maybe some of these things can be sped up with the right softwares of putting them into automated systems. But we're going to hear from the Ontario Education Minister, Stephen Lees, as he talks about how Ontario is going to improve the education system, but they're looking to improve the basic skills first: reading, writing, and math. And we'll learn how Ontario is going to do it, and we can watch to see where their successes are. So let's listen to that segment now and maybe learn how we can help more kids across Canada.
Good morning. Thank you all. Thank you so much, Patrice, for the introduction and for your leadership in the ministry. I want to just first off give a quick shout out to our amazing hosts here at the Albion Library for welcoming us. A brilliant space where literacy is promoted every single day and STEM education. And I also want to thank Alicia Smith from Dyslexia Canada and Kevin Maynard from the Canadian Foundation for Economic Education for joining us for this important announcement. We know that for your children to strive to reach their full potential, we must ensure they master their foundational skills. Every day, parents tell us they want their children's school to focus on the fundamentals, improving reading, writing, and math. So today, we're outlining our strategy to boost math and literacy skills in Ontario by going back to the basics. In every stage of life, mastering mathematics and reading is critical. Yet in this province, and frankly around the entire industrialized world, too many children are falling behind. And the EQAO data confirms this. We have schools that have consistently underperformed in these fundamental skills. And so today we are challenging the status quo, raising the bar. All of us, from educators to school boards to governments to community, working harder and smarter, leading to better outcomes for your children. And so today, Patrice and I are proud to unveil Ontario's plan to boost literacy and math skills designed to deliver better schools, better jobs, and outcomes for your children. So first, we're going to be investing more than $180 million in additional funding for the coming school year focused on math and reading supports. Through this investment, our government is supporting the hiring of nearly 1,000 specialized math and literacy educators, all designed to deliver better schools for your children. Now, specific to math, we're going to be investing more than $71 million in a new math plan, supported by the recently introduced modernized math curriculum that mandates financial literacy and coding in every single grade. Ontario's plan to boost math skills will hire hundreds of specialized math educators. We will also double the number of school math teacher coaches in classrooms. These are math coaches that are going to provide direct, hands-on support to both the teacher and to students in classroom that are falling behind. To ensure school boards have one senior leader that is exclusively focused on improving math competence and the training of our teachers with new strategies to lift math skills in the classroom, we'll be funding one dedicated math lead in every single board. They will spearhead math curriculum implementation, they will standardize the training, and provide additional supports for math coaches in schools and in classrooms. This is another accountability measure we're introducing to help every single board lift their scores and the skills of their kids. We're also enhancing skills of new teachers through dedicated training and covering the costs of additional math qualification courses, professional development, to help enhance math fluency and competency of our frontline educators. We're also going to be expanding financial literacy learning and resources in the classroom to ensure more of the hands-on, practical learning, like personal budgeting, how to save, how to pay taxes or take a mortgage or live within one's means. And finally, we're going to continue to expand access to digital math tools. That's the live teacher-led virtual tutoring offered in math. That is a lot. But to ensure these resources have impact, we are also announcing the creation of a math action team to drive improvement. These are highly trained educators who will be seconded in the Ministry of Education and deployed to those boards where we need to raise standards to improve the training and the outcomes of our kids. The Math Action Team will drive improvement by working with school boards to identify and recommend targeted, high-impact teaching practices to improve math achievement right across this province. It is an all-hands-on-deck approach to boost financial literacy and math skills in the classroom. Now, when it comes to literacy, we know many young children have faced regression over the past years. It's an experience parents around this country have said they've seen themselves. So first, we're going to overhaul the entire language curriculum, which will be in place this coming September. This curriculum will help every single child read, including those kids with intellectual or developmental disabilities. And I'm pleased to announce our plan to boost literacy skills through a historic investment of more than $109 million, the largest investment in the country to boost literacy, because we take this seriously. Because if we don't intervene at the front end and course correct these challenges for these young kids, it can lead to long-term impacts. Illiteracy costs our productivity and our economy billions. It undermines self-confidence. It impacts mental health and their job opportunities. So starting this September, in addition to a new curriculum, I'm announcing that every student in their second year of kindergarten, in grade 1 and in grade 2, will be screened to ensure they're meeting the provincial standard. This is critical to establish some measurement tool so that we can intervene with additional supports in the schools and classrooms and to those kids that will need it most. Ontario's plan to boost literacy includes over $100 million, and that includes new supports, including nearly 700 additional frontline reading specialist educators. They'll be deployed to help those children to get them on track. This will ensure all young learners receive the necessary foundational skills and the early interventions that are going to be critical for their lifelong success. This represents the largest investment in math and literacy in the country. It is by far the most comprehensive literacy promotion strategy in the nation. And we're doing this because we recognize the challenge ahead. Now, we're also extending Ontario's free tutoring program to the end of the school year, again with a focus on boosting those fundamental skills in reading, writing, and math, and other STEM disciplines. This plan will up our game, and it sends a clear signal to the entire province that we have to do better to boost the skills that actually matter to the success of your child. So yes, back to basics, back to learning what matters most so that your children can graduate, they can own a home, and get a good paying job. So thank you for joining us, and I'm now pleased to welcome Kevin Maynard, the Vice President of the Canadian Foundation for Economic Education, to the podium.
Thank you, Minister Lecce, students, other invited guests. Thank you for inviting me to this great event. We know that learning happens throughout our lives and that learning occurs at libraries such as this, at home with the support and guidance of parents and other caregivers, and in schools with teachers equipped with the skills and resources that are required in today's ever-changing world. We know that education is in the business of preparing our youth to build successful futures, and we all have a role to play. A key challenge is the rapidly changing world of work. As jobs disappear, jobs are created, and jobs change, and the labor markets adjust to these new realities. Employers are looking for new skills, different types of knowledge, and their needs and interests will continue to change in the future. It is essential that we equip our youth with the fundamental skills that will enable them to adapt and respond to these changes, and to sustain success and respond to opportunities in our evolving world. This initiative by the Ministry of Education and math resources and professional development support makes a tremendous contribution to the potential for improving the readiness of Ontario students for the future. After all, we are all after the same goal, improving the potential of our youth through investments that will lead to building financial capability and ensuring that our full potential can be reached as individuals and in our communities throughout the province and beyond. Thank you again, and now I'd like to invite Alicia Smith, Executive Director of Dyslexia Canada, to come up.
Thank you. Every year for the past 20 years, we've had at least a third of students leave high school in Ontario without having reached the level of literacy that they need to fully participate in the modern economy. That's 1 out of every 3 students who are being shut out of life's opportunities due to low literacy. Low literacy puts these young people at an increased risk for many negative long-term outcomes, including under- and unemployment, poverty, homelessness, and issues with mental health and addiction. And we know from decades of data that racialized and Indigenous students, students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and students with disabilities like dyslexia are disproportionately impacted. But it doesn't have to be this way. Research conducted in Canada and internationally, along with real results from classroom teachers right here in Ontario, clearly show us that if we change our approach, we can improve our outcomes. When schools align instruction with reading science, implement universal screening using evidence-based tools to identify students who are at risk of dyslexia and other causes of reading difficulties, and provide targeted early intervention starting in kindergarten, reading difficulties can be prevented for over 95% of all children. We have had the information and the tools necessary to improve outcomes for over 20 years. The Ontario Human Rights Commission Right to Read inquiry was launched to discover why it is that the Ontario education system had yet to adopt current evidence-based practices. The OHRC has provided a comprehensive set of recommendations for system change at all levels in education, including at the ministry, school boards, schools, and in our faculties of education. Dyslexia Canada is encouraged that the Government of Ontario has committed to implementing the OHRC's recommendations. We see today's funding announcement as a positive and necessary step that will help Ontario school boards shift their approach to early literacy to align with evidence-based practices. I know many Ontario school boards and teachers who have made significant progress over the past several years in updating their practices. It is so exciting to see the data that is coming out of these schools and classrooms and to hear about the positive impact that these changes are having on children, not only on their reading ability, but also in their confidence, self-esteem, behavior, and their enthusiasm for reading and learning. But there's a lot of work to do to ensure that every child in every school board is provided with the instruction and the support that they need to get off to a good start with reading. With today's announcement, we are one step closer to that goal. I'd like to thank Minister Lecce and his team for engaging with us in productive discussions over the past year. Dyslexia Canada remains committed to working collaboratively with all parties and all stakeholders in education as we work towards fully implementing the Right to Read recommendations. Thank you. And I'd like to invite Minister Lecce to answer questions.
Thank you. We will now open the floor for questions. Please step forward to the mic and state your name and outlet. Just a reminder, it's one question and one follow-up. First question.
Minister Lecce, you spoke about hiring around 1,000 staff towards this new program.
Yeah.
There are 4,800 schools in the province. Any hiring that was done during the pandemic, school boards have said, was done through pandemic funding. Mm-hmm. Most likely, those 7,000 jobs, many of those people will be laid off. So with only 1,000 people being offered up, which is less than 20% of schools across the province, how much of an impact do you really think that new staff will make?
Well, the province will be providing the fulsome education funding details for school boards very shortly, where that answer could be provided. For today, what I can commit to is providing more capacity and staffing that was there in years past. I mean, the literacy program, this $109 million is entirely new. We never had a program dedicated specifically lifting standards in literacy right across Ontario through new curriculum, through new staffing, and frankly, more resources in the classroom. On mathematics, last year we were investing about $55 million. This year, according to the plan, it's over $70 million. We're going to sustain the staff and hire additional ones because we recognize we've got to zero in on those classrooms that are underperforming. The goal with respect to math is to really focus on that lower 20% of schools, that quintile of schools that are really underperforming, use those supports, those additional staff to get into those classrooms and lift standards. So the message we're sending really is we're going to help every child get ahead by focusing in on new supports, resources, and people to improve literacy in mathematics. But we're also going to really focus in on the lowest performing schools to lift them up too, so that every child's able to succeed in the economy.
So you just mentioned sustaining the staff that have already been hired during the pandemic, a commitment we haven't really heard before. You mentioned the budgets are coming up and that
Yes.
You will make those commitments soon. The budget, of course, due in June. There's only less than 2.5 months to go. Why wait so long to release those details to school boards?
Well, the funding for school boards usually comes out in the early to mid-spring, sometimes late winter. So this is not abnormal. And what I can confirm to you, as the budget confirmed, is that the funding for next school year is going to be up by over $1 billion, $1.3 billion in baseline funding increase for school boards. We're going to be really focusing in on strengthening reading, writing, and math skills. We're going to improve supports for mental health and special education. So I think families could be assured that this plan today to really go back to the basics on emphasizing and improving literacy and mathematical competencies is going to go a long way, especially after the pandemic. And of course, in very short order, we'll be able to provide the broader investment for school boards and be assured that we're going to be there for kids. We're going to ensure we invest in them through these resources and staffing, because we all want them to succeed. We've seen the decline in reading, writing, and math skills, and today's plan is a clear signal that we're not going to sit idle, we're not going to hope for the best, we're going to invest through a comprehensive plan that really lifts the skills and the standards and frankly the ambitions of kids by making sure that they can exit their high school experience having mastered those fundamental skills. Thank you.
Thank you. Regarding the new literacy screening for younger students, what kind of programming and funding and resources will be put towards the kids who are falling behind?
Yes.
And are you going to track them as they go through the school system?
So thank you for that. So we are going to be providing school boards with the full funding to procure the tool, as well as the funding required for the licensing. So we're going to be covering all the costs associated with that tool and that technology, standardizing the training across Ontario to make sure the teachers are comfortable with this screening tool. It's going to help over 400,000 kids every year get a basic screening assessment up to 2 times per year. And that's going to be important. It's also going to be accessible and available on the report cards for parents to see, to create that transparency that that parents rather know about their youngest learners, how they're doing, and how, frankly, they're improving. And then with respect to the investments associated for those kids that may need some intervention, let's say that your child is falling behind or below the standard, we're now putting in place the hiring and the funding of nearly 700 teachers who are specialized in literacy promotion to work specifically with those kids to lift up the standards and frankly just to help them get a bit more support so they can get back on track.
I also wanted to ask you about the Halton Public Board. More than a month ago, they said they were going to put a professionalism policy in place and hire a special advisor, neither of which have happened. How do you feel about the way the board is continuing to handle this issue?
Well, they made commitments to parents in their community, and we expect them to follow through on them.
Andréane Williams, Radio-Canada. Just before I ask my questions, does anybody speak French here? No? Okay. Always have to ask. So my first question is about the fact that in the 2023 budget, $37 million had already been announced for literacy and math. So is the money announced today new money, or is it on top? Yeah.
So we're announcing over $109 million specifically just for literacy. So those additional supports we're announcing today. And frankly, I think they're very needed. As we heard from Alicia and others, I mean, if we can really invest in a plan that helps every child improve their literacy and their math skills, if we can give confidence to parents that we're going to increase the supports and resources for them, I think we're going to help ensure that kids can confidently graduate and ultimately get a good job.
So this is additional money?
This would be, well, yes, I mean, there's additional funding we're unveiling today that it was not covered in the budget. The budget speaks to, for example, the fact that we're increasing investments in financial literacy. The budget commits to an increase of investment overall to the Ministry of Education for our schools, a $1.3 billion baseline funding increase. So that's going to help a lot. But today we're going much further through a comprehensive plan that brings it all together, that's really premised on lifting standards, increasing resources, increasing the specialized frontline teachers that can work directly with children, directly in classrooms, and frankly help get these kids on track. We know parents, we've heard them loud and clear, particularly parents of young children, that fear that if we don't act now in kindergarten, in grade 1 or 2, in those early formative years, that their kids could have lifelong impacts and roadblocks to success. So we hear them and we're investing in them with a plan to get them on track.
And how is the money going to be divided among regions and schools? Because there must be regions and schools that that need that money more than other.
Yeah, so it's going to be, I mean, some of the funding is based on enrollment of children, and some of it will be triaged to help kids in schools that have historically been low performing. That 20% of schools that have historically been underperforming in Ontario with respect to math, that's where a lot of the resources will go. But frankly, every school, I mean, rather, all school boards will benefit from the investment. And I think it's critical, especially as we see and we hear from job creators and employers who are saying to us, look, we've got to make sure that young people, when they graduate, they've mastered the skills that matter most. That's why today's plan to bolster literacy and mathematical skills, I think is going to have a massive impact in the life and success of a child. Thank you.
Hello, Minister. Andrew Brennan from CTV. I just wanted to talk actually a little bit about that, the triaging and how that process
Yes.
will work. So if it's 20% that are being identified, first of all, will they be getting 20% of each of the budget line funding, or how will that work and how will it be allocated?
Yeah, so it's an important question. So for each grade, priority schools include the lowest achieving 20% of schools. So we're going to really emphasize and focus in on those according to EQAO data and really ensure that they get the resources necessary. It'll be based on the needs of kids in all schools. But the fact is, we have a plan today to improve literacy and math across the board. But when it comes to mathematics, you know, we understand that financial literacy is fundamental to the success of a young person, not just in their own life, in their own household budgets, but also with respect to getting a job. So we are going to make sure we lift standards with accountability in place. The first approach is, yes, triaging and focusing in on lifting up the standards of the lowest performing schools and boards. The second is to provide a new curriculum with more math coaches. We're doubling them to provide support in schools. And finally, we have a math action team, which is essentially a team of highly trained, highly skilled math educators who we've seconded, we've brought them into the ministry, that we can now deploy into the classrooms or schools or boards that actually need to do better. And so we're using a multitude of actions, more staffing, an action team, accountability. We're frankly sending a clear signal to parents and to the education sector that we've got to work harder and smarter and produce better results for children. And I think this math support is going to really help get kids on track after years of difficulty, and the pandemic, of course, only set them further back. So this is a realization, a recognition of a problem, and a plan to help them succeed.
And you were
Okay, so we learned something, and we also learned that, hey, you know what? Not all brains are wired the same. And that means that we have to have some flexibility in our education system. We still need those basic skills, the reading, the writing, and those basic arithmetic and math skills. But how do we support those who have brains that are wired slightly differently? As we heard from Alice Smith, the Executive Director for Dyslexia Canada. And there are other things out there, people out there who have different things other than dyslexia, autism being one. And there's many, many more of ways of how the human brain can be wired, and that we're not all wired the same, but we all can achieve greatness. And by learning about how the human brain is actually wired and the samenesses and the differences, that we can learn how to improve our education system so our children can achieve way more than what we have ourselves. So, thank you for listening to us here on Policy and Rights here at Depictions Media Radio. I've been your host, Michael Clogs. Please click that subscribe button wherever it may be and get continued updates from us. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.